Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Madden and I am a traditional artist. So, to start off with, there's AC on. If you can hear it, I'm sorry, I'll try to edit it out, but if I don't have it on, I will die. But today we've got kind of a combination haul slash draw with me. I got like two art-related things and I thought it would be kind of cool to combine them. So to start off with the actual art supplies, I got quite a few colors of Grumbacher Academy watercolors, which is my personal favorite student grade watercolor brand because there's zero chalkiness, there's tons of color payout. They're really nice. I got 8 colors. The colors I got were Emerald Green, Davies Gray, Alizarin Orange, Green Earth Hue, Phthalo Green, Geranium Lake, Gamboge Hue, and Carmine Hue. Now, I mostly got colors that I'd never tried before, but I thought were really interesting, but I have tried a couple. But yeah, so I'd love to swatch the various colors next to each other for you. But first, I'll show you the other part of this haul that's going to make this kind of exciting. I also got several vintage art books that I'm very excited about. Some of these, I guess by some people's definition, aren't art books. They're books about applied arts or crafts. First one, which is just the most thrilling title, Fantasy Furniture by Bruce M. Newman, with this cover. And it has lots and lots of historic examples from all over the world and all throughout time, really, of fantastical, artistic, imaginative furniture. Like this shell furniture. It also has some full photos of the furniture in situ, where it would have resided, so in the rooms. And it's kind of organized by what style of fantastical furniture it is. So one of them is like more of a oceanic theme, like shells and waves and sea life, and then there's a whole section on furniture made out of horns and bones, which is kind of crazy, but very interesting to look at. And just tons of great inspiration for like fantasy world building or whatever. Like, if you combine this sort of logic to fantasy creatures who might have insane, crazy horns and antlers, I'm sure you could come up with some really incredible ideas. Or like this one, you see these antlers that look almost like leaves, like oak leaves, like that could inspire like fairy furniture if you see shapes that look like other things, like twisted branches or leaves or all sorts of stuff. There's a whole section of like carved wood furniture made to look like animals and bears and tree stumps. That's like so cool. I learned about stuff that I'd never heard of in terms of interior design and fashions for furniture and all that. Stuff I'd never had any idea existed. There's a whole section on furniture made out of roots and twigs. So you get this really, like, honestly kind of fucked up looking furniture that's all twisty. It kind of reminds me of the black twisty tentacles in the Room games, you know? The ones that come in. This is the first time I've ever seen coiled velvet, which is just bizarre looking, but so fascinating. But I just had never heard about so many of these things, these different furniture design styles that are all really incredible. This sunflower chair, which is just stunning, and then the perfect green velvet upholstery that matches it exactly. I think that one's really cool. But yeah, just, it's such a great world-building inspiration book. This is so cool. Art Nouveau Architecture edited by Frank Russell. It's kind of old, so color photographs are few and far between. But there are lots of black and white photographs as well, so there's plenty of stuff to look at. You can see this like incredibly detailed carving right here. That's really gorgeous, and Art Nouveau is one of my favorite artistic scenes or moments or whatever you want to call it, eras. And I think a lot of people underestimate how broad it was. It covered a huge range of very diverse styles, from almost cubist stuff to the incredibly flowy ironwork and, you know, stuff like that. It covered an incredible range of styles, especially in the interior design space. There's this building covered in poppies, I think that's what they are, and it's so beautiful. People tend to reduce Art Nouveau to just Alphonse Mucha's advertisement work, and I think that's doing both Art Nouveau as a whole and Alphonse Mucha as an individual a disservice, because he did paintings outside of his advertisements that are so incredible. And the Art Nouveau movement included so many artists. So I think it does both of them an incredible disservice to do that. But yeah, lots and lots of architecture, and I also think architecture is super interesting. And it's not just photographs of interiors and exteriors. There are also some sketches for some of the buildings. I don't know if they're illustrations of the buildings after they were built or plans for the buildings, but it's super interesting. It's super interesting to look at these drawings as well. These like simplified versions of these incredibly complex spaces is so cool. And again, a really great resource for world building, especially like if you're world building a slightly more modern world, but you still want something very fantastical. I think it works really, really well for that. This book kind of bridges the gap between the two kinds of books I have. This is Art Nouveau. This particular book is by Maria Costantino, and it includes architecture, applied arts, also paintings and stuff like that. All kinds of stuff. And then it has a section on like Art Nouveau's legacy into the Art Deco and beyond. So that's really, really interesting. But it's very cool to get multiple books that cover the same works of art, written by different people, because you get different perspectives on the same work of art. Of course, we have Klimt, Gustav Klimt, and his gorgeous, gorgeous work. It's got like a section on jewelry, and that's a really gorgeous spread from it. This is a watercolor sketch for a printed textile that someone was making, and isn't that just so stunning? So, so stunning. So yeah, it really runs the entire gambit that Art Nouveau itself ran, from glasswork to jewelry to architecture, silversmithing, painting, furniture, everything, and a huge range of artists and their different styles and different countries and how their individual Art Nouveau scenes developed their own like subspecies of Art Nouveau, which is really, really cool to me. So growing off of that, we have the Art Nouveau style book of Alphonse Mucha, all 72 plates from Documents Décoratifs in original color. And this is all Alphonse Mucha work, and it covers an incredible range of his work and his different stuff. We have this gorgeous sketch. I guess this is like an advertising, almost like an advertising example, to me it looks like. This is something I never see mentioned when people talk about Alphonse Mucha, but like we've got designs for objects that I guess he did. Like, I love this page with all the stuff laid out on it. like just the layering of the pieces, and I'd never heard anyone talk about him designing objects. Apparently he did some botanical illustrations, so this is a daylily. Wallpaper type designs that he did that are so gorgeous. Like, look at that. We have Monet's years at Giverny, Beyond Impressionism, and this is almost completely full color, but there are some photographs from the time of Monet, of his studio, and of Giverny, and of Monet himself. I always love seeing photos of Monet because he looks a little bit like a garden gnome. But it's really cool to see like actual photos of him just being a person, you know? It's a really cool book because it has fold-out pages. It doesn't contain my absolute favorite works by him, and I was kind of flipping through it quickly, but it does contain a lot of his work, like a huge chunk, and some of it's so simple but effective. Like this, I saw this, and before I'd even read what it was, I was like, oh, that's wisteria. Before I had looked at it for half a second, and I knew that this was wisteria. And then I looked down at the title, and I studied it, and it's like, I'm right. And that just fascinates me, how he was able to do that. I do like a lot of the work in it, and even a lot of the stuff that I don't like, I can find something very interesting in it to learn from. I really like this one with the yellow and all of the movement in the leaves and stuff. That one's really gorgeous. And I didn't learn this until recently, but apparently towards the end of his life, his eyesight had gone really bad from cataracts. And that's apparently when he started doing these very dark paintings with lots and lots of red. And I don't like them visually, but it is fascinating now that I know that, to look at them and think that, like, to the same extent that these past paintings represent how he saw the world then, when he could see really well, once his eyesight started fading, this is how the world looked to him in his style, right? Like, the other paintings are the world kind of as we see it, plus his art style. And then these later paintings, the red and the heavy strokes and all that, are how he saw the world. And I think that's very interesting. The next book I got was this book on Maxfield Parrish. He's a very interesting artist. There aren't a lot of his works. He has like a couple different sets of work, I guess you could say. And this doesn't contain that much of the stuff that I really, really love by him. He started doing these very androgynous figures in these very fairy tale-like settings. And those are the ones I like the most. I think they're really, really pretty. And this does have some of them. But it contains, apparently, and I didn't know this until now, but it also contains a lot of his advertisement work. So I'm going to show you 2 pages that give you a very clear idea of the 2 very separate styles he worked in. So you have these very dreamy fantasy classical stuff with these really bold blue skies. He really liked to do these gradient skies from blue down to like a greenish yellow that are really, really stunning. But then, he also did these cartoony ones for, like, advertisements and stuff. He did a lot of advertising work, and it's full of his advertising work. And it's really cool, it's really weird and fun, but I didn't know about it until after I got this book. And it was like, oh, that's not what I know you for. These books I got on the side of the road, and they're kids' books. The Enchanted World, I guess is a series, so the Enchanted World series by Time Life Books. There's dragons, fairies and elves, wizards, and witches. And I just thought the cover was neat. These covers are really cool. And then I flip through them, and they're like really heavily illustrated with tons of illustrations from like around the world and from different illustrators and all that. So like there's this, that's really cool. And this, some very old school fantasy illustration type stuff. It's all like really, really fun. And just like, books like this are really cool for finding inspiration because they're so varied. So you can flip through and like, it's not like flipping through one artist's book where like you might find an inspiration, but if you're not finding inspiration in their style in general or in their work in general that day, you probably won't find it in the book at all. Whereas stuff that has like lots of different artists, it's like, well, I'm not feeling this or this or this, but that one's cool. Then there's the Fairies book, which has a beautiful cover, like I said, and this beautiful medieval manuscript style layout on this page with the flowers. It's so pretty. And there are lots of pages with that sort of thing, but actual like medieval illustrations, it looks like, which is fun. Medieval illustration is wacky in the best way. I feel like this is more like 60s illustration, maybe? That's kind of the vibe I get, like 60s, 70s magazine illustration is almost the style I'm getting from that page. Like, it just, I haven't really had a chance to like read these, but like, that page is so cool. Like, look at all the little sparkles, and it's all dark and beautiful. Really like that. And this page is super, super cool. I can see a lot of inspiration potentially for the fairies in Fantasia. Very beautiful, and I just got these like in a free pile on the side of the road. And then we've got wizards and witches. Old, I don't know, maybe Russia, Hungary, that sort of area. Styling of clothing, it looks like. That's the Baba Yaga tale, so that would be like Russia. That's right. Which I've always really liked the story of Baba Yaga because it really doesn't matter who illustrates it. It seems like everyone just wants to make something incredibly gorgeous when they illustrate the Baba Yaga story. Shadowy Sisterhood. That's a pretty sick spread. That's really cool. This, whatever this is, it's weird. I like it. That's a really, really cool page design with just the berries around it. That's really nice. But yeah, so I've got all these books, I've got these new paints, and what I thought I could do for this video was maybe swatch the paints and see the colors and flip through these books and maybe do some studies or copies of things I see in it to help spark ideas and also help fill up my sketchbook. So I think I'm mostly going to use, for inspiration, the fantasy children's books. And then maybe we can do a little study of something Monet. I mean, we're working mostly with greens, grays, and reds, so not that many colors. Or maybe I could try to recreate one of the ones that I like in these colors. That could be cool. So yeah, just gonna play around using these books as inspiration and these colors as my only art supplies. So let's see how it goes. I feel the need to make a little like safety announcement. This is a set of vintage paints. Vintage paints very frequently contain toxic pigments. The most toxic state a pigment can be in is in powdered form, so I'm not in danger being in the room with these paints that are mixed into a binder, but it is worth noting that this green, this emerald green, contains strontium yellow, which is not common anymore at all, but it's not, like, safe. Don't get it on your skin, because it can cause allergic reactions, and absolutely do not do anything that would risk you eating it. I'm very good at not getting paint on my hands, and I'm just going to be doing a swatch of it. And I don't use them in my finished work because you never know how light fast or what the quality controls were for paints this old. So I'm going to just leave that warning there, and like, I'm taking this risk, and I don't have like pets or small children who might get their hands on this or whatever. So just be careful, you know, be sensible. If you find old paints, and, you know, maybe consider whether or not it's worth it to you to actually play with them at all, you know, because they aren't good for making finished work. The two I wanted to swatch against were this emerald green versus the modern emerald green. And again, this is the one with strontium yellow, which is dangerous. It's a very pretty color. It's a mix of several different pigments, and it's got a very weak tinting strength. I actually think I have a really good dupe for this, though. That's probably a lot safer. This paint is by Roman Small, and it's malachite, so true malachite, which is not like don't eat malachite, it's like made out of copper, but I wouldn't worry about it quite as much, and you can actually get your hands on it and all that, but I'd say that they have a very similar tinting strength and behavior and all of that if you did want a color similar to this, because it's very pretty. And then the next one I wanted to swatch was Phthalo Green, and I'm gonna swatch both of the Phthalo... Oh, actually, I need to check this. Alright, I know which one it is. I thought I might have had a Phthalo Green and a Phthalo Green Deep, but I have a Hooker's Green and a Hooker's Green Deep. So, I've got Phthalo Green here, which is a vintage paint, and then I have Phthalo Green by the same brand, but their modern version of it. And then this is by a different brand, but this is a modern version of Emerald Green, as opposed to this, which is a vintage version. It's also worth noting that, like, even if they knew that strontium yellow was toxic back in the day, it still would have seemed much, much safer than the emerald greens of the time, which were made with, oh god, which one is it? Arsenic. There we go. So, we've got a vintage emerald green and a modern emerald green, and then we have a vintage phthalo green, which is beautiful. But I do think that this modern emerald green might be a decent dupe for what I've seen of actual historical Paris green in, like, photos and stuff. Photos and paintings. I think we'll kind of need to wait for it to dry to actually tell, but... oh, that's very pretty. I think this might be showing up a little bit more yellow on camera than it is in real life, but that's very beautiful. I really, really like that. But this is a really good color if you're into Art Nouveau and the Victorian period for inspiration in painting, because they used emerald green a lot, and I think that is quite close. I think the real deal has a faintly more blue hue, but not by a lot, not by a lot. In fact, I feel like you could add just a touch of this. And those are very similar. I think this one is like slightly bluer, and it feels like it gets darker more easily. It just feels darker than this one, but just to give it a fighting chance. Yeah, I still say that looks more yellow than this one. But that's really cool. And then now that it has wet for a little bit, I can swatch the malachite next to... let's call this retro as opposed to old, because I don't want to confuse anyone that it's like an original arsenic green, because it's not. It's not. Yeah, okay, so this is definitely more yellow, but if you added just a tiny bit of phthalo green, I think you would end up with something almost exactly like this. And you'd get a very similar, like, opaque, milky granulation look to it, because that's what this was reminding me of. This was reminding me of the way the texture of this works. They're very, very similar in that, and in their faint opacity and all that. So if you like the behavior, the way that it looks like this paint behaves, this is a really good dupe, in terms of behavior. This is very, very close to what I've seen of original Paris green. It just feels... I mean, Paris green covered a range, but it just feels faintly more yellow. But very close, and it has a very similar glow to it, so that's really cool. And I'd like to swatch the other colors. So here's the green earth hue, and I actually have some right here so I can swatch them next to each other. And this one seems a little colder than the one I already have. I don't think they're too different. In fact, this is also very, very close to the old emerald green. It's a little more muted. It's a little less, still a little less blue, but actually quite close. Closer than the malachite and probably a fair bit cheaper. And then we've got Davies Gray, and I'm going to compare it to the Holbein Davies Gray right here. In the swatch online, they looked very different. Ooh, yeah, that looks... Yeah, that was the main difference I noticed online. It looks much darker than the Holbein one, which I think could make it a lot more versatile than the Holbein one. Wow. So here's the Grumbacher Academy Davies Gray, and then this is the Holbein one. And they're very different. This is very yellowy green, and this is much, much bluer and lighter. That can get decently dark, but the Holbein one really, really can't because it clearly has white in it. It can only get as dark as this pan, and that's like that's total mass tone right there, and it is not nearly as dark. So that's very, very interesting. Feels like we've moved a little bit yellower. Oh my god. I unscrewed the lid and it just exploded. Someone was eager. That was a little early, bud. Wow. That is a lot of yellow paint. I guess we'll have to find something yellow to paint. It looks very close to... Yeah, that's very close to like an Indian yellow. It's very pretty though. This is a Schminke Terra Verte next to the Academy. This is a lot more muted. This is much more muted, and this is much more blue. So that's cool. That's interesting. And it also looks like it, I don't know, but it looks like it might granulate a little bit more. I love this yellow though. That's really intense. I'm almost like a California poppy type. Not quite as orange, but like the same thing going on. And then the next color, we'll go with alizarin orange because we've done yellow. I'll try very hard not to squeeze the tube. Ooh, that looks very pretty. Wow. That's very nice. Ooh, that's really, really, really nice. Let me just take some of that and some of that. I was saying California poppy. That is like exactly right. That is the exact color of a California poppy. That's beautiful. That's really, really gorgeous. It feels like there aren't that many orange pigments outside of cadmiums. And I like I've said, I don't really like cadmium oranges. I like cadmium reds, but anything lighter than a red in cadmium just looks kind of gross because it's so opaque. In watercolor, light cadmium colors look very nasty to me. This is Carmine Hue, and I think I'll just put Geranium Lake on the plate right now. So we've got Carmine Hue, which is a very pretty pink. Ooh, that's really, really nice. Yeah, that's just a classic, beautiful, cool-toned pink. And then, before my battery dies, I'm gonna try to swatch the Geranium Lake. Wow. Wow, that is a beautiful red. I don't think the camera's gonna pick this up, but I am so picky about my reds. And when I find a good red, it's like Christmas Day. There we go. Yeah, and it's not... A lot of times the only reds that feel saturated enough to me are the very pink ones. They wash out really pink, and then they're red in mass tone. This one is red all the way through. That is a washed out red, not pink. And it's beautiful. Wow. It looks like it's not too opaque, so that could be really, really good. That could be really useful in the future. But I think this is a really pretty palette of just greens and oranges and pinks. And we've got some options. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna think on this for a minute. Okay, so while I was waiting for the camera to charge, I did a tiny bit of color mixing just to see what my range was, because after flipping through those books and then swatching these, I think I have a pretty good idea of what I want to do. But it does have a tiny bit of purple in it, and I don't exactly have a blue, but mixing the phthalo green with the pink actually gives you a very effective, if muted, blue. And I think in a painting full of yellows and oranges, spoilers I suppose, I think that will still make a very passable, nice blue. There's also some purple, so I tried mixing it with a little bit of the Payne's Gray, which I feel like has a little bit of, I don't know, I feel like it might have ultramarine in it. Let me just, yeah, Pigment Blue 29. I'm pretty sure that's ultramarine. So I gave that a shot, mixing that with the pink, and we've got, I mean, it's a nice muted color, but it's not really a purple, and I don't think adding more of the green will help. That's a little bit more green, and we've just got like a warm gray, really. I could try adding more pink to the blue color we've already got. Okay. That's actually a very that's an impressive purple. Considering we're using a green, but we're using a very blue pink and a very blue green. That's almost teal. So the fact that it made a purple, it's not that surprising. If we add just like a hair more green to the mix, still keeping it on the purpler side. Don't want to end up with this again. Okay. Okay. I think I'm starting to see a plan come together. Hello, Editing Madden here. I just popped in to say that I have come to the realization that there is way too much footage to put into one video, and in that footage there are two entirely separate conversations that happen in the first and the second half. So this video is going to be split up into two parts. That's 2 parts. And the second part will be coming out next week, so look forward to that. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and leave a saucy little comment in the comment section below this video. And I will see you next time. Bye!